Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, giving all praises, glory, and honor be to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. This is Brother Isaiah from the Hopeful Elect, and the brothers on the screen, Azrael and Danal, joining you, I guess you could say, for this Sabbath day of rest, man, and giving edification, giving wisdom, but most of all, giving all praises, glory, and honor be to the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, through the name of his only begotten Son, who is an instrument for our salvation, right? Or an instrument of salvation for the nation of Israel. So today's lesson, man, is titled Know Your Position, right? And it just stems from, I guess you could say, a conversation that I had with my wife a week ago on the Sabbath, you know, and just really knowing your position in life, right? So, without being too long-winded, in
Brother broke up, breaking up. Oh, I get out of this.
Salak, can y'all hear me now?
Con.
Okay, what is the last thing y'all heard? Because I don't know at what point.
You said that you and your wife had this conversation.
Con, yeah. So this lesson stemmed from a conversation that I had with my wife last Sabbath day. And we were just talking about, positions and knowing your position and knowing, I guess you could say your role and knowing why you should play it. So without being too long-winded in the introductory, right? Let's go ahead and get our first precept.
KP.
Deuteronomy 10 and 12, our first precept.
I say KYP.
You said KYP?
Con.
Oh, Con, yeah, Con. I thought you said, can you repeat? My bad.
Deuteronomy 10 and 12, and I'll open it up here in a second. Just wanted y'all to see the title. Deuteronomy 10 and 12. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, but to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul.
Con. Verse 13.
Verse 13. To keep the commandments of the Lord and his statutes, and which I command thee this day for thy good.
Right. So verse 12 and 13 wanted to start off with first because anytime we teach people on the street corners about, what's the Lord's requirement for us, why is it important to know that, who the children of Israel are? Why is it important to know that, we have to keep commandments in order to receive salvation? We always go to this, right? Deuteronomy 10, because it's a good marking point to show that, hey, the Lord does have expectation for us. And contrary to what the world may preach or what the world may make it seem like, there is a requirement for those who believe and profess in the name of the Most High God and who are striving to get to the kingdom of heaven. And we have requirements. So we go here to tell them these are the requirements, right? What are some of the things that were mentioned in that verse? Can you read number 12 again one more time?
Verse 12. And now, Israel, what doth the Lord thy God require of thee, and to fear the Lord thy God?
So wait, real quick. The first thing that was mentioned is to fear the Lord, right? So this is going to be I guess you could say, a 2-part, maybe 3-part lesson or series that I'm doing on this specific topic, knowing your position. So today we're talking about our relationship with the Most High. And the most important thing that man should know in his or hers relationship with the Most High is that our position is to fear the Most High God. It's the first thing that's mentioned, right? So let's keep reading. Let's look at the second thing.
To walk in all his ways.
To walk in all his ways, right? Keep reading.
And to love him, and to serve the Lord thy God with all thy heart and with all thy soul.
Verse 13.
to keep the commandments of the Lord
Right.
and his statutes, which I command thee this day for thy good.
So to fear the Lord thy God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, right? And to serve him, right? So the things that we should be doing in our position towards the Lord is fearing him, loving him, and serving him, right? Right. So the only thing that not the only thing, Salakia, but the things in between, such as to walk in all his ways, hey, that's a part of fearing him, loving him, and serving him, right? Those three aspects of our relationship with the Most High is emphatically our position as vessels on this earth. We're supposed to fear the Lord, we're supposed to love the Lord, and we're supposed to serve the Lord in him only, right? Why is that? Let's jump down to verse 17.
17. For the Lord your God is God of gods and Lord of lords, and a great God, a mighty and terrible, which regardeth not persons, nor taketh reward.
Hey, the Most High God is God of gods, right? He is Lord of lords, right? So even in times, right, in specific religions that I'm not going to name because we name them all the time, but a lot of people try to equate, the Son of Man being on the same scale as the Most High God, and that's not true, right? Because there's order and structure that's even mentioned by our beloved brother Paul in 1 Corinthians 11:3 that we must follow, right? What does it say in 1 Corinthians 11:3? For I have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman, the man, and the head of Christ, God, right? So Christ is Lord, yes, but even Christ knows that he has a Lord. And the Lord that we're speaking on, that we should fear, love, and serve, he is Lord of Lords, the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, right? So when we're talking about our relationship with the Lord, we have to know our position. And knowing our position, knowing is that, hey, he is the Lord of Lords. We have to fear him. We have to love him. We have to serve him, right? Because why? He doesn't respect persons. And now he does respect nations, right? We can read about him respecting the nation of Israel in the book of Exodus. But as far as on a personal scale, everybody can be judged and has been judged from the greatest to the least, right? Let's read verse 20.
Verse 20. Thou shalt fear the Lord thy God, him shalt thou serve, and to him shalt thou cleave and swear by his name.
So again, it's commanded of us to fear the Lord our God. Him shall we serve. Him shall we cleave and swear only by his name, right? No other gods, right? Now let's go to the book of Matthew, chapter 22, and let's start at verse number 36. Because, see, in the mouth of two or three witnesses is a matter established. So let's go get another account of it not saying the exact identical thing, but saying things in the same similar fashion, right? Let's start at verse 36.
Matthew 22, verse 36. Master, which is the great commandment in the law?
Right? So
Verse
right here you can see
37.
the Pharisees asking Christ, hey, which is the great commandment in the law? Now, what is the Lord, right? Little Lord to the big Lord that we're speaking of, right? What is he respond with? What is his rebuttal?
Verse 37. Jesus said unto him, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind.
Right. Let's read verse 38.
This is the first and great commandment.
So the first and great commandment is to love the Lord thy God, right? With all thy heart, soul, and mind. Again, our position in our relationship with the Most High God is to love him. Well, it's to fear him, to love him, and to serve him, right? Those three are simultaneously one thing together, right? They all are co-equal and co-eternal in the same saying, right? Because at the end of the day, you cannot have one without the other. You can't say, well, I love the Lord, but I don't fear or serve him. Well, I fear the Lord, but I don't love or serve him. Well, I serve the Lord, but I don't love and fear him, right? It's impossible to have one without the other. The same way uh, people say, you know, the relationship with Christ is co-equal and co-eternal. Nah, the characteristics of our position with the Lord are one, right? So it may not say fear, right? But it says love. And at the same time, to love the Lord is to fear him, right? To fear the Lord is to love him. To serve the Lord is to love and fear him, right? So understanding, we went to these two verses to to point out two different parts where it tells us that we should love the Lord with all our heart, soul, and mind. It says the same thing in Deuteronomy 10. Christ said the same thing in Matthew 22 and 37, right? Now, again, emphasis on the love part. So someone, and I wrote down in my notes, right? Just a point of emphasis. I said someone that we truly love is someone we wouldn't disobey and we would trust, right? So someone that we truly love is someone that we wouldn't disobey and someone that we would trust. Now let's go to the book of First John chapter 5 and let's go to verse number 3, right? First John 5 and 3. And we're going to read that real briefly and go to Exodus 20 afterwards.
1 John 5 and 3. This is the love of God, that we keep his commandments, and his commandments are not grievous.
Right. So to love the Lord is to obey him, right? Because it says what? For this is the love of God, that we keep his commandments. You can't keep his commandments but disobey them at the same time. Or some people will say, well, yeah, you can, you kind of can, you know what I'm saying? Because it's not keeping the commandments in full. Salaki, it's not keeping the commandments in its fullness if you're disobeying them, right? So to love the Lord is to keep the commandments, not keep one and break another, or keep the other one and break the other one, right? That's what James 2 talks about when a lot of people like to say, well, you can't keep the law because if you break one, you break them all, right? That's just the wisdom given in James saying, hey, it doesn't matter which commandment you broke. If you broke a commandment, you're a breaker of the law, right? So that's why it's important to know that when it comes to serving the Lord, again, it comes with obedience. Obedience is better to obey than sacrifice. So in order to love the Lord, we have to keep his commandments. That's why I mentioned someone that we truly love is someone that we wouldn't disobey. We can't disobey the Lord and say we love him, right? Somebody has something to say?
And I was just going to say, service comes with anything you love, whether it be a person, place, or thing, right? When a lot of us was in the world and we loved the church, right? We loved the building, we loved the church. We signed up to be ushers, join the choir, to do this, to pay tithes, to keep the lights on. We serviced the church because we loved the church. Same thing with the military. People love their country so much that they want to, serve their country, right? And join the military, protect it, and obey all the laws that come with that. Same thing with gangs, right? You might have been in a gang and you love them brothers, and they changed your life, and you want to serve the gang, and you're gonna adopt all the laws and the commandments that come with that gang, right? You know what comes with, the repercussions of everything. You know the consequences of everything. You know what you're supposed to be doing, what you're not supposed to be doing in any aspect of life with something that you love. Same thing with a relationship. You chose to have a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a wife or a husband. You know what comes with that. You chose to have kids. You know what comes with that. And because you love these people, right? You vow to serve them. That's what love does. Love makes you want to serve. So the concept of loving God and not serving him, or not seeing yourself as a servant or a slave to him, a slave to righteousness, is asinine, right? You can't just say you love him and do what you want to do, right? And that's why it's saying, like he just read, it's not grievous because you're supposed to love him. If you love him, it don't matter how hard it is that he asks you to do, it's not going to be grievous because you love him that much. I mean, for Pete's sakes, America asks people to die for them, and people sign up every day. That's very grievous to me. You know what I'm saying? But if you love your country enough, right, you're willing to die for your country. It's not a grievous thing. So I just wanted to put up my 2 cents on that. But fine, I yield. You said Exodus what?
Exodus chapter 20, right? And we're gonna start at verse number 1. But nah, that's a mighty point because at the end of the day, people don't realize how much service that they give to um any and everything in life, right? So when it comes to the Most High God, we always find some sort of loophole or excuse why we can't serve Him to the fullest, right? But hey, we love money so much that we work a job, like the brother mentioned, we certain similitudes. You know what I'm saying? When you worked in church, you was in the Christian church, you did certain services, certain acts of service to help build up the church. The same way with our jobs, right? With our jobs, we sit up here and we go to work. Why? Because we love getting paid. We love money. We love to have financial, I guess you could say, some sort of financial freedom in being responsible to pay bills, to have certain things. So we go to work and we do what they tell us, even though we might hate it, we do it. Why? Because at the end of the day, I love getting paid. You know what I'm saying? So the love that you have for that money supersedes the hate that you have for the work that may be asked of you, right? But it's different, like the brother said, because when it comes to the Lord, we shouldn't hate anything he asks us to do because we love him that much, right? Now, let's
I
read
don't know, a lot
Exodus
of
20.
people,
Oh, go
like you
ahead, go ahead.
said, I was gonna say a lot, like you just described, man. A lot of people treat serving God like a job. Like they kind of hate doing it, but they want to make it into the kingdom. You know what I'm saying? It become grievous to them because they don't really love God. They don't really love. It's not really in their heart to love Him. So that's why if any other religion pops up or any other thing pops up before their face, another sermon or lesson, and it discredit the Bible, they be the first ones to leave. They never loved it in the first place. They were, and that's what made them so enticed. Their own lust, right? Because He told us, He don't tempt us to do anything, man. It's our own lust that tempts us. Pecan.
Con. Hey, let's start at verse number 1 in this chapter, right? Because we're going to build on the point you just made.
The book of Exodus, chapter 20, and verse 1. And God spake all these words, saying, I am the Lord thy God, which I brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. Verse 3.
Let's
Thou shalt have no other gods before me.
right.
Thou shalt
So we're going to stop right there. Right there, the Lord gave us the first and great commandment, right? Which is, we shall have no other gods before me. Before he said that, he says, I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods before me, right? And if we understood our position with the Lord, right, we wouldn't do like the brother said. We wouldn't try to find any and every excuse or reason to not serve the Lord because we feel like it's grievous unto us, right? Because see, if we knew our position with the Lord, we would avoid certain things in our lives, like the scenario the brother gave, which is ironic because the next precept I had mentioned on my notes was Exodus 32:1. Let's go there real quick, and then after that we're gonna go to Judges chapter 10, right? Let's read just verse 1. Let's just read verse 1.
Book of Exodus, chapter 32, starting at verse 1. When the people saw that Moses delayed to come down out of the mount, the people gathered themselves together unto Aaron and said unto him, Up, make us gods, which shall go before us. For as for this Moses, the man that brought us up out of the land of Egypt, we wot not what is become of him.
So because people don't understand their position, right? And how does people not understand their position? Well, because one, they're already breaking the first commandment that was just given to them. You shall have no other gods before me. But because they know not what became of Moses, right? Because he was up in the mount, right? Now they're saying, well, let's make us another God because we need something, right? To cleave to. We need something. It's the same thing that happened later on. And let's go to the book of Judges chapter 10 real quick. Let's go to the book of Judges chapter 10. And we're going to start at verse 6. And all these things work together, right? So let's see the similitude of Exodus 32 and Judges chapter 10, right? Let's start at verse number 6.
Judges 10 and 6. And the children of Israel did evil again in the sight of the Lord, and served Baalim and Ashtaroth, and the gods of Syria, and the gods of Zidon, and the gods of Moab, and the gods of children of Ammon, and the gods of the Philistines, and forsook the Lord and served not him.
So before we keep reading, think about the first and great commandment, right? Now, not the one that Christ mentioned in well, actually, yes.
Bear with us.
Pop quiz. Who knows what the first and great commandment was? We read it earlier. You don't know? I see nobody in the chat. Nobody in the chat knows. Come on, chat. Honor thy mother and thy father. Nah, that's not it. You know, that one is the first promise. Ones in here.
So,
That's not
can y'all hear me?
We can hear you.
Salak, man. Hey, man, I'm gonna get off this church. I'm gonna tell you the truth, because when people call you, mess you up. But dang, where I was at was, what is the last thing y'all heard me say?
You said
You were
what was
going
the
into
first
what Christ said.
You said going in, yeah, Khan. So the first greatest commandment, right, which Christ spoke about in Matthew 22, it's the same thing that the Lord told us, which is the first great commandment given us unto us in Exodus chapter 20 and verse number 1-3, right? Love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and all thy mind, right? What does Exodus 23 say? I am the Lord thy God, which have brought thee out of the land of Egypt, from the house, out of the house of bondage. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. So if we understand our position, we know that the first thing that we should do first and foremost is understand that the Lord is our God and nobody else, and we should have no other gods, right? That's love. And the only way you can fulfill that love is through service, right? Like the brother mentioned. But when you go read Exodus 32:1, you see them breaking the commandment, making them other gods because they're not understanding their position. And then you go to Judges 10, and when it talks about how we went to serve the gods of other nations, because again, we failed to know our position, you begin to see why the Lord made certain promises unto us like this. Let's go to real quick. We're going to come back to Judges 10, but let's go to the book of Deuteronomy chapter 28, right? And let's go to verse number hold on, wait. We'll go to big and make it wide. I forgot to write the verse down, but it's the one that says grope at that noonday. And Khan, the sister put the precept that we read earlier on the screen too, right? The first and great commandment.
There you go. I was trying
Okay,
to do
Khan, can you read that real quick?
I was trying to do a little pop quiz when you broke out to the chat.
Oh, okay, Salakia. But can somebody read Deuteronomy 28 and the verse? I can't really see it, so
28 and 29.
yeah.
The book of Deuteronomy chapter
28.
The book of Deuteronomy 28 and 28. The Lord shall smite thee with madness and blindness and astonishment of heart. Verse 29, and thou shalt grope at noondays, and blind grope as the blind gropeth in darkness, and thou shalt not prosper in thy ways, and thou shalt be only oppressed and spoiled evermore, and no man shall save thee.
So when you read the curse of Deuteronomy 28, right, and you read why the Lord would put these curses under us, it was through our service, right? So whatever act of service we showed unto the Lord, that's the type of love and mercy he would bestow unto us, right? And it was fulfilled because when we went into serving other gods, he caused other gods to reign over us. Now let's go back to Judges 10, because it'll say the same exact thing. Where remember it said oppressed, right, and spoiled forevermore. Let's keep reading. Starting at verse 7.
Dan.
Con, verse number 7, you said?
Con.
Con, and the anger of the Lord was hot against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the children of Ammon.
Con, keep reading.
Verse number 8, and that year they vexed and oppressed the children of Israel 18 years. All the children of Israel that were on the other side of the Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is in Gilead.
Con, let's read verse 9.
Moreover, the children of Ammon passed over Jordan to fight also against Judah and against Benjamin and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was sore distressed.
So we've seen the words oppressed and distressed right after we just read in the curses. And now this is before the time of the judges, right? But we just read in the curses where we see that we would be oppressed and spoiled forevermore, and no man would save us. It's the same thing about when we were going through various, or let me rephrase what I'm saying. It is because that we didn't know our position with the Lord is why we went through various captivities where no man has saved us, but the Most High God ultimately, right? He is the Savior. But when you see how through our disobedience, through our acts of service, not knowing our position, right, has caused us to go into captivity, it should make you rethink the way you approach everyday life in your relationship with the Most High. So all I'm saying is that if we begin to know our position and remember our position each and every day and understand it thoroughly, right? We're not the Most High God, and our job is to fear Him, serve Him, and love Him according to His plan. Then we would eliminate certain things that cause us to go off and serve these other gods, right? It's no possession that nobody could offer you to cause you to serve anybody else because the Lord gave you a commandment. And if you truly loved Him, you would obey the commandment He gave, right? Also, He gave in His commandments, Deuteronomy 16 and 19, that we should not take gifts, right? Because gifts pervert the hearts of the wise. And let's read it real quick. Deuteronomy 16:19. Let's read that real quick. So that way I don't I guess you could say misspeak the law. I want to read that because that's a point of emphasis.
Deuteronomy 16 and 19.
Con.
Thou shalt not wrest judgment. Thou shalt not respect persons, neither take a gift, for a gift doth blind the eyes of the wise and pervert the words of the righteous.
So it blinds the eyes of the wise and perverts the words of the righteous, right? That's why you have to read the law, like brothers say, a king should at least be reading in the law every day. Why? Because when you know your position and you know that it was commanded of us to not do certain things, you would realize that it's so easy to serve the Lord than to not. Because the things He's telling us to do are very simple, elementary things, right? But the problem is, like Brother Azrael said, some people view it as a job. You know what I'm saying? We view it as 9 to 5, let's clock in, let's clock out, right? We view it as, I only got to wear fringes when I'm in public, and I'm around people so that way they can see that I'm wearing fringes. And that's the problem, because that's when you start giving yourself over unto man. You start being servants of men rather than the Lord. So because you're in the presence of a man of the Lord, you feel like, okay, well, I'm serving the Lord when I'm letting the man of the Lord see me doing righteousness. But again, Sirach 23 and 19 says, hey, look, the eyes of the Lord are 10,000 times brighter than the sun, beholding all the ways of man. So that's when you're in someone's presence or not in someone's presence, you're supposed to be a servant of the Lord in heart, soul, and mind, in spirit and in truth, right? But when you don't know your position, you start doing things like serving other gods for any and every reason. One of the reasons the brother mentioned, because, oh, it's too hard. So anybody that can make you feel like this Israelite thing is false, oh, you'll take heed to it, because at the end of the day, it was kind of grievous to you anyway. The same way we in captivity now, and some people have a hard time believing in the scriptures because of certain lies that were put on the Bible, that were put on the man named Christ, that was put on David, that was put on Solomon, that was put on Paul, that was put on the Most High God. All these lies have caused people to turn their backs from hearing the law that the Lord gave us for an heritage and an inheritance. And now we don't know our position. So now, instead of serving gods, now we're going to crystals. Now we're going to zodiac signs. Hey, now we're giving unto doctrines of devils because it sounds good, right? But we got to remember some of the wisdom that was given from our beloved brother Paul in the scriptures is that the wisdom of the world is foolishness with the Most High God. And that's why it's important to know, again, the first and great commandment, or the thing that you should remember the most in your relationship with the Most High, is that we're supposed to fear him, love him, and serve him, right? And if you do those three things, you will never fail, right? Because they're simultaneous, they're co-equal and co-eternal with one another, right? Let's go back to Judges chapter 10 real quick, and let's finish out through verse 14. And then after that, we got a few more precepts, and then we'll close. And I do mean a few.
Denal, verse 9.
Judges 10 and verse 9. Moreover, the children of Ammon passed over Jordan to fight also against Judah and against Benjamin and against the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was sore distressed. And the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, saying, We have sinned against thee, both because we have forsaken our God and also served Baalim. And the Lord said unto the children of Israel, Did not I deliver you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites, from the children of Ammon and from the Philistines, the Zidonians also, and the Amalekites and the Moabites that did oppress you? And you cried to me, and I delivered you out of their hand. Yet ye have forsaken me and served other gods, wherefore I will deliver you no more. Go and cry unto the gods which ye have chosen, let them deliver you in the time of your tribulation.
Right. So the reason I wanted this to be read is because we're understanding something like this. When we don't know our position, the Lord will give us over unto these delusions that we follow, right? It says the same thing, I think, in Isaiah, in Proverbs, that he'll give us over to a strong delusion, or he'll laugh at us, or he'll mock us when our calamity cometh, right? The same thing that happens when the Lord seen us serve other gods. He said, okay, now put your trust in the gods that you started to serve. Let's see if they can deliver you out of the day of your tribulation, right? Hey, and that's what happens, right? And that's what's been happening to our people, especially in this captivity that we're in for a long time, right? The Lord is saying, okay, let's see if all these other gods can deliver you from X, Y, and Z. Let's see if Benjamin Franklin can deliver you from X, Y, and Z. And the reason I said Benjamin Franklin, because if you don't know money, he's on the $100 bill. He wasn't a president, but he was someone of importance in establishing America, right? But nonetheless, at the end of the day, certain things that we put our trust in, certain things that we put our faith in, that is not of the Most High God, is not the Most High God himself alone. Hey, them things can't save us, right? So that's why it's important. It is very important to know what our position is, right? Because what did Deuteronomy 10 and 17 say? Deuteronomy 10:17 said, our God, the Most High God, is the God of gods, and he is the Lord of lords, right? Why would I want to serve anything subservient to the one that's, that's saying serve me, right? It's like it's like the owner of the company, right? And the owner has set various expectations and guidelines for you to follow, but someone from outside the company says, "Oh, well, I know him. I know him, and he don't care if you do certain things that's against the guidelines, because at the end of the day, he's a real chill, laid back type of person. So you come into work with your pants not with a belt not on your pants, like it mentions in your employee handbook, listening to John from down the street who has a different company that's not as great as Mark's company that you're working for, and now all of a sudden you're fired from your job, right? And what Mark is going to tell you, well, who told you to wear your pants like that? And you say, well, John said he knows you and I can do this. And Mark is going to tell you, okay, well then go see if John can help you get your job back. Simple stuff like that, At the end of the day, the Most High God is the God of gods. He's the Lord of lords, right? Our position is to serve the Most High God regardless of what position we're in. That is our position in our relationship with the Most High. With that being said, let's go to the New Testament real quick. Let's go to Romans chapter 13, right? And like I said, we only got a few more, and I'm pretty promising on that.
13 and
Start at verse 1. We're going to read verse 1 through verse number 5.
The book of Romans chapter 13, starting at 1. Let every soul be subject unto the higher powers, for there is no power but of God, the powers that be ordained of God. Verse 2, whosoever resisteth the power, resisteth the ordinance of God, and they that resist shall receive to themselves damnation.
Mm-hmm.
For rulers are not a terror to good works, but to the evil. Wilt thou then not be afraid of the power? Do that which is good, and thou shalt have praise of the same. Verse
So,
4.
real quick, before you read verse 4, again, the rulers, right, that are in these positions of power, they aren't a terror unto good works, right? Just meaning, I know we read this a couple lessons a few weeks or maybe a month or so ago, right? I had this precept read, but I just want to emphasize that it doesn't matter what position that you're in, right? What captivity you're in. Captivity could only do one thing. It can make the Most High God truthful, or uh it can make you take the Most High God's name in vain, right? So in a sense, this is what I'm saying. Even in captivity, right? There were certain captivities in the scriptures where they were trying to make it unlawful and oppress us to keep our law, right? So as a believer, as an Israelite, as a follower, what do you think your position is when you're faced with, dying to death or, submitting to the will of your oppressors and breaking the law of your God? What do you think is our position?
Dying the death.
What'd you say, Brother Nanal?
Come on, man.
Hey, I'm going to agree, right? Our position is that if we're faced with breaking the laws of God or keeping them for the sake of our lives, hey, we're supposed to be willing to lose our life for the name of the Lord, right? What did Christ say? Whosoever will lose his life will save it, and whosoever will save his life shall lose it, right? We've seen examples in the Maccabees of Eleazar and the mother and 7 sons of being persecuted unto death, right? For not profaning the name of the Lord. So that's what it means when it says the powers that be are not a terror unto good works. It's a good work to die for the name of the Lord. It's a good work to not break the law of God. It is not a good work to break the law of God, not save for anything, but it's not a good work to break the law of God to save your life in thinking that the Most High God is going to understand you because you were faced with a life or death situation, right? We got to be faithful unto death for these laws, statutes, and commandments. That's exactly what it is to love someone unconditionally. That's exactly what it is to love someone in spirit and in truth. Because as well as the Most High God has given us laws, statutes, commandments, and ordinances, he's also given us promises. And if we keep those promises, even unto our death, we will receive those promises in the life that should come, right? But if we choose to break them, we're not going to receive anything. The same way a lot of our forefathers and mothers were not able to see the promised land because they broke commandments, right? So the Lord had to put them to an early death. The Lord had to purge out a generation of our people, 40 years worth, because they were rebels. They were breaking the commandments of the Lord, right? And he needed to give us the land, and we needed to go into the land a holy and clean people from the youth up, right? So we have to remember that, again, it doesn't matter if you're in captivity, right? Just because you feel like you can make more money on Saturdays when you work, right? And I'm just saying that for those who keep the Sabbath on that day, because I know everybody may keep a Sabbath differently, right? But for those who keep the Sabbath the way in which we keep it, brothers, it doesn't matter if your job could give you more money, right, on that day. You're supposed to say no. No, I can't work that day. It's non-negotiable. I don't care what my bank account looking like. I'm going to be just missing out on money for the name of the Lord, right? Because if you're not willing to miss out on $150 just for a day's work, man, I'm not even sure that you'll be willing to die for the name of the Lord, right? Now, let's keep reading. Let's go to verse 4.
Verse 4. For he is the minister of God to thee for good. But if thou do that which is evil, be afraid, for he beareth not the sword in vain. For he is the minister of God, a revenger, to execute wrath upon him that doeth evil.
Right. So again, these powers, man, they're a minister unto they're not a terror unto good works, but to evil ones, right? Because they're gonna give you all the ammunition. You can look at it in two ways. I'm gonna look at it like this. They can give you all the ammunition you need to do evil, and you'll choose that for the sake of your comfort and pleasure in the land of your captive, right? Or in the place of your servitude. You always got to be willing to choose the good and not the evil, right? Because it says what? He is the minister of God to thee for good. If you choose to do good, it's going to be a good report of the Lord. But if you choose to do evil, right? If you choose to be afraid of man and not the Most High God, hey, guess what's going to happen? The Lord doesn't bear the sword in vain. Neither will your oppressor for the sake of you breaking the commandments, right? Let's go to let's jump down and let's go to the book of Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. Because when I was reading this earlier, to add to the lesson, it reminded me of this that we read at camp last week for the brother Denal did a video, the conversation about Wednesday, right? Let's read this in Galatians 6 and 9.
Galatians chapter 6 and verse 9. And let us not be weary in well doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not.
So it doesn't matter of your position, right? Our position in our relationship with the Most High is to fear, love, and serve Him, regardless of our position in our lives. And if you're in a position where you're in captive, you're in a bind, you're in anything, right? The position for you is always to remain the same. Never grow weary in well doing. So if you've been doing right, if you've been forsaking the Sabbath, not forsaking the Sabbath, if you've been forsaking working on the Sabbath, if you've been denying your flesh, if you've been doing all these good works, don't grow weary in it, regardless of the position that you're in, right? People will try to corner you. That's what they're meant to do. People will try to corner you. These spirits will try to corner you and put you in a corner and make you choose, right? And you just got to decide which route you're going to take. So each and every day is an opportunity to choose righteousness, to choose that which the Lord commanded us to follow, right? Because that is our position. Our position is to fear Him, to love Him, and to serve Him, right? You can't have one without the other. You can't say I love God, but I'm gonna not serve Him today because today is my day that I gotta work overtime on the Sabbath because I know that we was commanded to keep the Sabbath, but because I'm in captivity, I'm gonna need a little bit more money to help me get through this captivity because I'm not supposed to be living in captivity like a poor man. That's it. And then you start justifying yourself, right? And a sinful man will not be reproved, but find an excuse according to do his own will, right? So grow not weary in well doing. Never get tired of doing the right thing. Like we read earlier in 1 John 5 and 3, these commandments are not grievous, right? They should not be grievous unto you, right? The only time they get grievous unto you is when you forget your position, is that we're supposed to fear the Lord, love Him, and serve Him. All these other gods and all the things that these other gods can offer are nothing compared to what the Most High will have for us on this side of life and on the next side of life if we continue to obey Him, right? And not grow weary in doing the right thing, not grow weary in being set apart, not grow weary in looking like fools for the name of the Lord in the eyes of men, right? Woe to them who make flesh their arm, right? I think that's what it says in Jeremiah 17 and 5, right? But again, now to close this out, I'm going to read two precepts, right? Let's get the book of Judges chapter 10 and verse 15, and then we're going to go to 2 Kings chapter 22, and we're going to read a couple verses in chapter 22 and a few verses in chapter 23, and then we'll close it out, right? Because these last two verses point to the ending point. We're going to excuse me, it's going to be three more, but the two main ones that we're going to elaborate and build points on. So now
You
we
said
read
what?
You said it's Judges 10, 15, and we're going to read 10, 15, and 16, and then we're going to go to 2 Kings chapter 22, and we're going to start at verse number 8, right? But what I was saying is that in our lives, man, sometimes there have been people that have gotten out of position, right? So what we like to read on the street corners when people tell us that, oh, they're not following the law, and then we give them knowledge of the law, and now they seem excited, okay, they want to make that change. What we always tell people is we go right to Psalms 119 and we read 59 and 60, right? I made haste and delayed not to keep thy commandments. So in closing, with these last couple examples, accounts that we're reading from these two various places throughout the scriptures, you just got to remember that sometimes if you grew weary in well doing and you got out of position, you have to recognize that you're out of position and make haste to get back in position, right? Because at the end of the day, a lot of people like to refer to being the tortoise in a situation when running the race, I guess you could say, of life, right? Slow and steady. I it could just be me by myself, but I kind of think like this. If we know we're wrong, we need to be like a rabbit and hurry up and get the heck, you know what I'm saying, back in the right lane. You know what I'm saying? We need to speedily hurry up and do what's right, right? We should tarry not long to turn to the Lord, like it mentions in Sirach 5 and 7. Because at the end of the day, we don't know our life's end. We don't know what day nor hour nor time, what we're doing, what cause of death, why. All we know is that there is an appointed time, and you don't want that appointed time to come for you to give up the ghost, but you was tarrying to turn to the Lord, but you knew you were out of position, right? So let's read 1 Kings 10 and 15. Judges 10 and 15 real quick.
Look at Judges chapter 10 and verse 15. And the children of Israel said unto the Lord, we have sinned. Do thou unto us whatsoever seemeth good unto thee.
Right. So we was reading Judges 10 earlier, and we were seeing how they went off and served other gods of the Philistines, the Amorites, the Ammonites, all the other nations, right? Now, verse 15 is them recognizing, saying, Lord, we have sinned against you. Do unto us as you please, right? Now let's read verse 16.
Deliver us only, we pray thee, this day. And they put away the strange gods from among them and served the Lord, and his soul was grieved for the misery of Israel.
So what they did was, once they realized they were in sin, they put away the strange gods that were among them, right? That's how we should live our lives. If we're out of position with the Lord, we need to make haste to get back in position. We don't say, I don't like using the excuse of, well, I used to say this. Well, we know that, Rome wasn't built in a day, or we know, hey man, sometimes things take time, I'm not expecting you to do so-and-so all in one night. But as of late, I've changed my mind, and I need to repent from saying those things, because at the end of the day, you can do all things through Christ who gives you strength. That's Philippians 4:13. There is no excuse as to why a man can't go from breaking the laws tonight to keeping the laws in the morning time, right? The only thing that will hold you back is you feeling like, well, I can't do it. And that's not your position to think that you can't, because the Lord already gave us examples through his son. The Lord gave us examples, and he gave us judgments in his word. So you can do it, right? So if you're out of position, you need to make haste and get back in position, right? What does Baruch 4 and 28 say? As it was your mind to go astray from the Lord, now being returned, seek him 10 times harder, right? And that's what you have to do if you're out of position. Nonetheless, recognize, acknowledge it, and make haste to get back in the right order, right? Now let's go to the book of 2 Kings, chapter 22. We're going to read a few verses there, and then we're going to jump over to chapter 23 and read a few verses there, and then we'll read the last precept. I won't break that down. We'll just read it, and then we'll close out. Close out for part 1. Let's start at verse 8. Con.
Book
Go ahead.
Book of 2 Kings, chapter 22 and verse 8. And Hilkiah the high priest said unto Shaphan the scribe, I have found the book of the law in the house of the Lord. And Hilkiah gave the book to Shaphan, and he read it. And Shaphan the scribe came to the king and brought the king word again and said, thy servants have gathered the money that was found in the house and have delivered it into the hands of them that do the work, that have the oversight of the house of the Lord. And Shaphan the scribe showed the king, saying, Hilkiah the priest has delivered me a book. And Shaphan read it before the king. And it came to pass when the king had heard the words of the book of the law, that he rent his clothes.
Con. So before we read verse 12 and 13, and those will be the last two verses we read in this chapter, right? What did he do? He rent his clothes, right? Because again, they didn't have the book of the law. It had been lost. Now they found it. Now let's keep reading. Let's see what happens, right?
Verse number
12.
12. And the king commanded Hilkiah the priest and Ahiakim the son of Shaphan and Achbor the son of Micaiah and Shaphan the scribe and Asaiah a servant of the king, saying, Go ye, inquire of the Lord for me, and for the people, and for all Judah, concerning the words of this book that is found. For great is the wrath of the Lord that is kindled against us, because our fathers have not hearkened unto the words of this book, to do according unto all that which is written concerning us.
Right. So he's announcing the judgment, man. The Lord's fire, the Lord's anger is kindled against us. Now, after this, because this will be the finishing of this chapter, after this, what he does is he making an inquiry to the Lord, right? So let's go to the next chapter over, chapter 23, right? After he makes his inquiry, let's see what the king does, right? Let's start at verse number, we can start at verse 1. And then we're not going to read the whole entire chapter, but we're going to read a couple verses, right? Yeah, let's start at verse number 1.
2 Kings chapter 23, verse 1. And the king sent, and they gathered unto him all the elders of Judah and of Jerusalem. And the king went up in the house of the Lord, and all the men of Judah, and all the inhabitants of Jerusalem with him, and the priests, and the prophets, and all the people, both small and great. And he read in their ears all the words of the book of the covenant, which was found in the house of the Lord.
Now, pause real quick. So he read the book of the law, right? He let the people know what our position is in our relationship with the Lord. What are we supposed to be doing? What's our purpose, right? What is our position, right? Now let's keep reading.
And the king stood by a pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to walk after the Lord and to keep his commandments and his testimonies and his statutes with all their heart and all their soul, to perform the words of this covenant that were written in this book. And all the people stood to the covenant.
So immediately he made a covenant and said, we're going to do what you told us to do, Lord, what our fathers hadn't done. They had done evil for so long, he turned and said, dang, we're going to make a covenant right here today, right now. He didn't give the people time to go home and dwell on it. He didn't say, well, woe is us. We've been doing wrong for so long. I really don't think that I should turn back and make haste to do right now because I've been doing wrong for so long. No, the king, mind you, this is Josiah now. He made haste to keep these commandments, right? Now let's keep reading. Right? Because the points are going to come as you read on. Let's keep reading.
Verse 4. And the king commanded Hilkiah the high priest and the priest of the second order and the keepers of the door to bring forth out of the temple of the Lord all the vessels that were made for Baal and for the grove and for all the hosts of heaven. And he burned them without Jerusalem in the fields of Kidron and carried the ashes of them into Bethel. Verse 5. And he put down the idolatrous priests whom the kings of Judah had ordained to burn incense in the high places in the cities of Judah and the places round about Jerusalem. Then also that burn incense unto Baal, to the sun and to the moon, and to the planets, and to all the hosts of heaven. Verse 6.
Hey, wait, before you read that, what's going on now is everything that he did and set up in the name of another god, an idol, he's starting to do away with it. He's burning them down. He's casting them down. He's renting the temple of these things, right? The house of the Lord of these things, right? Why? Because he made haste and delayed not to keep the commandments of the Lord, right? And that's what pretty much majority the rest of the chapter to a certain extent is going into, right? He's renting the holy places, the temples, the land, the people of all these other gods and these pagan traditions, these other ways, right? And that's how we have to be in our lives when we get out of position with the Lord and we fail to know our position, once we realize we've sinned, hey, we need to turn back immediately and start keeping the commandments of the Lord. Why? Because that is our position, to fear him, to love him, and to serve him, right? Now let's read let's read this last precept, Ecclesiastes 12 and 13, and I'll close it with that, right? No need to keep going on in 2 Kings chapter 23, because that's pretty much all that's happening. Is now Josiah is commanding all these things to happen. And guess how old Josiah was when he was doing all these things? 25, 26 years old, really. He started reigning when he was 8. It was in his 18th year that he had this Passover that was so great that no Passover had ever compared to it. That was immediately after he had burnt all these idols. He had destroyed all these false images and things of that nature, right? So he's about 26 years old. He's about my age right now, right? That's what happens when you get out of position with the Lord and you realize, oh, I'm out of position. Let me get back right. You make haste and delay not to keep the commandments, even at a young age, right? Now let's read these last two.
Ecclesiastes 12, 13 through 14. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter. Fear God and keep his commandments, for this is the whole duty of man. Verse 14, for God shall bring every work into judgment with every secret thing, whether it be good or whether it be evil.
Con. So in short, right? Not in short, but in sum, right? Our position is to fear the Most High God, to keep his commandments. That's our whole duty, right? In knowing our position in the relationship with the Father, the Most High God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God who delivered the children of Israel from the hand of the Egyptians and various other captivities, hey, it is our job to fear him and keep his commandments, right? Because he is the God of gods. He is the Lord of lords, right? He is the host of the host, right? He is the master of ceremonies of the master of ceremonies, right? So again, in knowing our position, let's remember to fear the Lord, love him, serve him, right? Let this be a word to encourage those who we know are not truly fearing the Lord, to give them a perspective to say, hey, fear the Lord, love him, serve him, because see, we know examples, we know positions and places we in the scriptures that we can go to say, see, so-and-so was dealing with the same thing you dealing with today. You look for a sign. That's what our people look for when we was coming out of Egypt, right? That's what our people look for all the time. Something that we can see, that we can gravitate towards to let us know that this God is real. This God is with us, right? And he gave us signs over and over again, and we chose to transgress over and over again, right? So we just got to know our position and stay 10 toes down and stop going off. And hey, one day the Lord will wrap this thing up, this captivity on up, and we back to the crib where we should be, right? Back on top. But with that, I yield for this part. I'll do another, part 2, speaking on our relationship with men, one another, and we're going to go into various subcategories of that, right? But before we close for this Sabbath, did brothers have anything to add?
Got one precept.
Do your thing.
You had something, Don?
Yeah, I got a precept too.
All right. What's your precept before I go to mine? I don't want to call the same one.
1 Corinthians.
Nah, mine's in John.
It don't matter whether you want me to go first or you.
Did we read John 15 and 16 already?
Nah, we didn't read John.
Kind of the book of John, chapter 15, verse 16. Ye have not chosen me, but I have chosen you and ordained you that ye should go and bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain, that whatsoever ye shall ask of the Father in my name, he may give it to you. These things I command you, that ye love one another, right? Just want to, put in perspective, know your position, right? Whether you want a position or not, you've been given a position, right? And before we were formed in the womb, right, the elect was chosen, right? So this is why he's saying, look, living in your carnal flesh, you have the illusion that you chose the Most High God and his son and to keep the commandments, but you were drawn, right, by spirits higher than you. You were chosen before you even made the decision to choose, right? So he's saying, you haven't chosen me, but I've chosen you. And he's letting you know that order because, you know, he has the power and the authority to ordain you and to give you a task, right? The task here, he said, to bring forth fruit, and that your fruit should remain. So he's saying, hey, look, you got to have good works, and you shouldn't, like the brother read in Galatians 6:9, you shouldn't faint because your good works should remain until the end, right? And, you know, your position is, hey, keep that fruit on that tree, because if you don't, you get caught slipping with no fruit on your tree, he gonna make sure that you don't live ever again like that fig tree, right? Pecan. That's all I
Come
said.
on, man. That's a good little segue to the priest I'm about to pull up. Let's get 1 Corinthians 7 and verse 22.
First Corinthians 7, verse 22. For he that is called in the Lord, being a servant, is the Lord's freedman. Likewise, also he that is called being free is Christ's servant.
Right, man. So a lot of people don't realize, man, what it means to be free, what it means to be a servant. Um, Being free, man, a lot of people forget the aspect of being free is being free from the care of yourself, from the care of your flesh, of the care of your well-being, right? You no longer have to worry about that anymore when you come serve Christ. He takes care of you, right? He ultimately leads your your path, right? He orders your footsteps. Like the brother says, man, he has ordained you and he already has what he has planned for you since the beginning of time, right? This is the stuff that he frees you from. You no longer have to care or wonder what your purpose is in this life. You no longer have to wonder whether or not you're gonna be go without bread or clothes, as he clothes the lilies and he feeds the birds. Right. He also says, "Never has he seen the righteous forsaken or begging bread." Right. So you no longer have to worry about these things. But another thing you don't have to worry about is the well-being of your life as well. And it's kind of bittersweet, but like we said since the beginning of this video, we live, whether we live or we die, we serve Christ, right? Let me put it all together for you. Talking about positioning, right? Because that's the title of the video, right? It's positioning. Imagine a chess game, right? You got multiple pieces on a chess board. You got two chess players, you got multiple pieces that belong to them. When you come into this faith, right? He placed you where he wants you to be. Whether he wants you to be a king, a queen, a pawn, a rook, right? A knight. He places you where he positions you where he wants you to be, right? And one thing that's hard to take for some people is that you want to be a king, but he made you a pawn. You know what I'm saying? In the game of chess, a lot of decoys are played, right? A lot of sacrifices and casualties are made. Sometimes them pawns, by default, the player, Christ, the player of the game, he already knows you're gonna die, right? But that's the role he has given you, right? When we look at some people don't even want to be a king. Some people don't want to be a rook, a servant, right? We got Jonahs out here. That's the position he's giving you. And just like Jonah tried to fight it, ain't no fighting the will of God. It's gonna happen regardless, right? So be okay with the position he's giving you, right? Whether you live or whether you die. Understand he's gonna take care of you while you're here, but understand your life is no longer yours, right? And we're just talking about positioning. Everybody's position is to be a servant. But Khan, are you?
Hey man, true words have never been spoken, right? So know your position, man. Embrace it, embody it, play it with all gladness, because if you do what you're supposed to do at the end, like I told my wife when we was talking about this topic, not specifically the topic of the lesson, but when we was having a conversation that led me to making this a topic of a lesson, I said, man, uh, gosh, what did I say? I said, you're not gonna be responsible for the actions of another man, right? It's not for you to worry about what's on the left, what's on the right. It's for you to worry about what's in front of you, right? What is your assignment, your duty, your responsibility, right? You're not judged by what anybody else does. You're judged what you do to anybody else, right? So, again, let's know our position, man. Let's play it. This has been the Brothers from the Hopeful Elect, bringing you another Sabbath day lesson, discussion, class, breakdown, whatever you want to call it. Signing out, saying until next time, we say shalom.
Shalom. Mighty lesson. I forgot I gotta be the one to